All right, what's up, everybody? Today we're going to talk about the top 10 Netflix originals ever made. 5 will be from me and 5 will be from my counterpart, Anthony. And this list can be movies, shows, documentaries, anything that is a Netflix original production. So right off the bat, number 1 for me, the best Netflix original ever, and it's pretty easy for me, is Ozark. But it was released in July 2017, and it's directed and starring Jason Bateman, which is pretty cool. So Ozark is basically about an accountant named Marty Bird, who is Jason Bateman. He gets sucked into working for the drug cartel, and he's a genius, but he wanted to just do the numbers, and he got sucked in a little too deep. And it's him and his family's story of, well, one, trying to stay alive and not get fucking murdered. There is a ton of Breaking Bad vibes in this show. If you love Breaking Bad, which basically every human I've ever met does, you'll definitely like Ozark. The writing in the show is just so unbelievable, and you really care for every single character, which I think is very rare. At least for me, for a lot of shows, I'll care about the 3 or 4 main people, but I won't care about the rando Joe Schmo who's in like one every 4 episodes. And the thing that I think is the most amazing about this show, which might seem like a little detail, but to me it's huge. In this show, when the characters talk, I feel that that's how people would actually talk in real life in these situations. And it might be just a little pet peeve of mine or something, but I feel like with a lot of movies and shows, almost all of them, they're written phenomenally well. The actors perform them perfectly, but a lot of times humans in real life, when they speak, they don't speak perfectly. They don't say an entire monologue when they're in an argument perfectly, with no stuttering, no pauses. You know, in real life, sometimes you forget what you're saying halfway through the sentence, or you stumble on your words, or you pause because you don't really know what you're going to say. And obviously actors incorporate that, but a lot of times when I'm watching a show and there's a 5-minute monologue, I'm like, no human would ever speak that eloquently and perfectly. I don't know, it just feels very raw and very real to me. It's one of those shows where if you're trying to multitask and do something else, you're not going to understand what's happening. And I love shows like that. I like shows that you have to be engaged in. There's a lot going on. It's a deep storyline, and Ozark is just all around 10 out of 10 for me. All right, so coming in at number 2, the second best Netflix original ever is also a show, and that's Black Mirror. I binged the first season faster than I've binged any show ever, I think. What's so amazing about Black Mirror is that every single episode is entirely different, totally unrelated, totally different storyline. So you can watch any episode in any order you want, it doesn't matter. It's basically like watching a bunch of 60 to 90-minute movies. But for me, what got me so addicted to it is the fact that although they're different, they're all revolving around the same idea and the same theme of technology and the dangers of technology and social media and what these technologies, if they existed, could do to society and do to us. And in my opinion, there was not a single bad episode until maybe 1 or 2 in the most recent season they put out. But even the bad episodes, I still enjoyed. They were still fun. It just didn't really have the same effect and the same power of like, holy shit, this is actually going to change the way that I act and think about technology. Like there was one with Miley Cyrus, and it was just but it was still fun. And what's so cool is since it's not based with a particular storyline, they can do whatever they want. One episode is in fucking outer space. Some episodes are set in totally different time periods than others. Some episodes are black and white. There is literally no limits to what this show can do, and they set that out from the beginning, and so it's really cool to see all the different directions they're taking. All right, moving on to number 3. The third best Netflix original show is Peaky Blinders, and that was a hard one because I absolutely love Peaky Blinders. I was thinking about putting it at number 1 or number 2, but I feel like it fits really good at number 3 because season 1 is pretty tough at times. It's really rough around the edges. The audio is really bad in season 1, understandably so, because they probably didn't have any budget and they didn't know if it was going to succeed. So visually and audio wise, the first season is by far so much worse than the following seasons, but when it comes to story, it's still phenomenal. It's a great story. It's a little slower at the beginning, so I think people who aren't really into film might have a harder time getting into it because it's not like action all the time. A lot of people, like my sister and my family, they just want action. They want exciting things to be happening 24/7, and Peaky Blinders isn't like that at the beginning. But if you can get into season 2 and then especially season 3, shit just goes absolutely wild. There is everything you could ever dream of in this show. Sex, drugs, gangs, guns, raids, wars, booby traps. There's comedy, there's love, I think I already said love. I watched this with my parents, and my mom absolutely hates violent shows that maybe make you not feel so happy after watching them, but she loved the show because there's aspects for everybody in the show. If life was really like that in 1919 after World War I, then holy shit, that would have sucked. Now, one last thing I want to say about Peaky Blinders. Cillian Murphy, who is the actor who plays the main character in the show named Thomas Shelby, he's a great actor. He was in Inception, and that's all I really know him from. Inception and Peaky Blinders. In Peaky Blinders, he is a very good-looking man. In all seriousness, he's literally on the verge of even being considered a hot man. He's not quite there. He can't really compete with Brad Pitt, but like in the show, his character, Thomas Shelby, is very attractive. He's clean shaven. His haircut is super nice. It probably helps because he always wears suits. Every single episode, they're in a full-on fancy suit. And at one point, I made a comment to my mom, like, would you consider him an attractive man? And she's like, oh yeah, he's super good looking. And then I looked him up in real life, and he's not ugly, just not what I expected. I've never seen such a drastic transformation from a beautiful character played by an actor and then the actor in real life. I was kind of mind blown because I thought he was on the verge of being a hot man, and then when I saw him in real life, I'm like, he's a man. All right, moving on. The fourth best Netflix original is a documentary. We're actually mixing it up a little bit. It's a documentary called Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. This documentary is absolutely amazing and has kind of changed my life, to be honest. So this documentary takes a behind the scenes look at Jim Carrey when he was acting in a movie called Man on the Moon, where he was playing a character of Andy Kaufman, who was an old comedian who's now since passed away. Now, it's sort of confusing, and I was confused at the start of the documentary, but basically, Jim Carrey acted in Man on the Moon, where in that movie he was playing a real life stand-up comedian named Andy Kaufman. Now, what was really cool is, for whatever reason, during the production of this movie, Man on the Moon, they had a ton of behind the scenes footage, on set, off set, even outside of it, like at the studios or at people's houses. There was a ton of footage. And what was so crazy about the production of Man on the Moon is that Jim Carrey literally became Andy Kaufman. And obviously everybody's heard of like method actors or whatever, those actors that become the character that they're playing. And I knew that was a real thing, but I had never seen it in action in real life. And seeing this footage of Jim Carrey literally becoming Andy Kaufman and not even associating with Jim Carrey anymore was super fascinating. And they actually got Jim Carrey to kind of narrate the whole documentary through an interview. The opportunity to get inside Jim Carrey's mind was so awesome for me. All right, the last thing I'll say about this documentary is there's one part where Jim Carrey, when he was playing Andy Kaufman, if I remember correctly, his daughter, Andy Kaufman's real life daughter, came to the set and talked with Jim Carrey as if she was talking with her dad, Andy Kaufman. It was really weird, and I almost felt like it was a little wrong, but at the same time, it just was super fascinating. Like, imagine Leonardo DiCaprio played your mom, and then you talked to him, and he was so good at portraying your mom that you actually thought Leonardo DiCaprio was your mom. That'd be pretty crazy. Okay, moving on. The fifth best Netflix original, in my opinion, is Stranger Things. Stranger Things is a very, very fun show, without a doubt. I think what a lot of people loved about it so much is that there's a very likable kid cast. Now, obviously, other shows have done it. There's been kid main characters, but I feel like Stranger Things did the best job of making you truly care about every single character and their individual storyline. So obviously, in recent years, there's been a big trend towards the supernatural. There's a ton of supernatural shows and kind of alternate dimensions and space and monsters and demons, and I think that Stranger Things came in at the perfect time and just did a great job of capitalizing everybody's awe and amazement of shows like that. Let's just rattle off some things about Stranger Things. Visuals, stunning. Soundtrack, phenomenal. That has to be one of the catchiest intro songs. Story? Great. It's an awesome story. Is it corny? Yeah, it's pretty damn corny, which isn't necessarily bad at all. But when 4 kids are running for their lives from a demon that's literally trying to murder them, and they crack a joke and they all start giggling, it's like, all right, come on now. Now, maybe that's just me not being fun and just being a Debbie Downer, but like, I'm just saying, if the Cat in the Hat guy walked into my room in the middle of the night with a fucking sledgehammer and was about to murder me, I wouldn't look at him and crack a joke and then run away. Do the kids make bad decisions just to allow the story to continue? Yes. That's one thing that has always kind of bothered me about a lot of horror and thriller movies, is no real human being would ever make that decision in that situation. But for the sake of the storyline and the other things that you want to shove into this show, they have to make that decision right then and there. And obviously, maybe I'm just being a prickler, and I'm not trying to sound like these are all bad things. It's a great show. It's fun. But that's the reason it's number 5 and not maybe number 1 or 2. So with all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed my top 5. Now I'm going to send it over to my buddy Anthony, who's going to talk to you guys about his top 5.
Number 1 on my list is Daredevil. Now, this is a show that came out in 2015. It started then. It has a total of 3 seasons. It was the first Marvel show on Netflix. I think it's also the best Marvel show on Netflix. Now, there's been a lot of Netflix originals, so it's hard to tell. But a lot of Netflix originals have this little thing called Netflix bloat. For those of you who don't know, Netflix bloat is what happens when Netflix tries to stretch out its shows to get their 10 to 12 episodes a season. And you can usually tell, like, towards the middle of the season, things start to get a little bit more drawn out. You can tell, like, they're just explaining everything, not a lot of stuff is actually happening. That's Netflix bloat. And I would say that that Daredevil has very little bloat throughout its 3 seasons. Plus, you have just an amazing cast. You know, you have Charlie Cox as Daredevil, Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin, who is just amazing as Kingpin. I mean, they're all amazing. And then we also eventually get introduced to Jon Bernthal's Punisher in Daredevil, which is also super cool. I mean, we're talking about these great actors just portraying these very grounded, realistic versions of these Marvel characters. They were able to create something outside of the MCU that just feels very real, and it's like, okay, I could see New York being like that. Also, the fighting is great. You have the hallway fight sequences, which now is like Netflix, well, it's like every show tries to jam a hallway fight scene into their shows and movies now. Daredevil just does a really good job at, you know, every episode is building to something else. Every second counts, every moment matters. Now, coming in at number 2 for me, might be a bit of an unpopular opinion nowadays, is House of Cards. And look, right off the bat, Kevin Spacey, horrible person, horrible things, okay? Not good. However, he's a good actor. And I know it's hard to separate those things now, but it doesn't really change the fact that in House of Cards, Kevin Spacey is Frank Underwood. Which I guess kind of makes sense because Frank Underwood is also a horrible person. If you're not familiar with House of Cards, it's basically about a congressman who works his way up to become president through scare tactics, manipulation, being a horrible person. And you don't have to be into politics to like this show, because really, the politics is just the setting. Really, this is about a man on his journey to complete power. It's a really interesting character study in that, and you know, in regards to that, it's a very dark show. Again, well, man, my list is kind of dark. Well, anyway, very dark show, but awesome. I would highly recommend it. When the moments when he breaks the fourth wall and he talks to the audience, it's like he's staring into your soul. From the opening shot of the pilot, it really sets the tone for the series as a whole. Frank Underwood's neighbor's dog gets hit in the street, and it's like a hit and run. And he's the first one out to see the dog. And the dog's lying there in the street. And he goes over to this dog, and he kneels down, and he starts suffocating he kills this dog as he's looking towards the camera, and he starts talking. And he's basically like, sometimes it takes a person that can do what other people can't. And he just kills this dog right there. And then like the neighbors run out like, oh, where's our dog? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, it didn't make it. Yeah, no, because he killed it. I mean, he put it out of its misery. And I guess that's kind of the point, like, he'll do the thing that you shouldn't do, which kind of is Kevin Spacey. I mean, again, he probably would kill a dog. Also, just so you know, House of Cards ended after 6 seasons. However, get this, it was nominated for a total of 56 Emmys, and it won some Emmys, won some Golden Globes. Like, we're talking a great show. I highly recommend it. That's number 2 on my list. Third, going back to the Marvel universe of Netflix, Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones was the second series ever released, Marvel series ever released on Netflix, and it follows Jessica Jones, who is a private eye, little detective who is also drunk, which is super interesting to watch because you have this person who acts like they don't care about anything, and yet, when it comes down to it, they kind of do care. And so you get to see her struggle with that. It's like she can't just stand by. And the show very much is a detective noir type show. It's not really a superhero. When I think Jessica Jones, I don't think superhero, I think detective. And it really works because it's something a little bit different. If you haven't at least seen the first season of Jessica Jones, highly recommend it. Even if you're not into superhero shows, if you like gritty detective stories, you're gonna like Jessica Jones. Side note on Jessica Jones. We also are introduced to Luke Cage, the other superhero in Jessica Jones, and he's like indestructible basically, and she's like super strong. But my point is, when Luke Cage comes onto the scene, there is a scene with the two of them in bed, and I'm talking like crazy stuff. I'm talking like Twilight Breaking Dawn level shenanigans going on. If you know what I mean. You Twilight readers, you'll get that reference. Coming in number 4, mixing it up a little bit, a recent movie, Triple Frontier. Talk about an all-star cast. You got Ben Affleck, Oscar Isaac, Pedro Pascal, Charlie Hunnam, Garrett Hedlund. I mean, amazing cast. And they play like a group of ex-special forces who reunite for like this big heist. And who are they robbing from? The head of a cartel in South America. I mean, sure, you have special force movies, you have those movies, you have heist movies, but how often do you get a group of ex-special force guys doing the heist? And that's not even like the catch of the movie. It's what happens after the heist. Because then it turns into this survival movie, and like, who would have thought that trying to steal hundreds of millions of dollars would kind of be hard, it would be a little bit hard to get away with. It just came out this past spring. I watched it like 3 times that first weekend because I watched it once by myself, and then I watched it 2 other times with 2 different roommates because I was like, guys, you have to watch this movie. And you know what? They liked it too. So watch this movie, Triple Frontier. It's on Netflix. It's just great. Cinematography, this is a beautiful movie. The story is just so original. The action is great. Ben Affleck is amazing. They're all amazing. Oscar Isaac, I mean, really, there's something for everybody in this movie, especially if you like action movies. And then, so finally, a series of unfortunate events starring Neil Patrick Harris. Talk about a fantastic show. I mean, I'm not even that big of a fan of the books. Like, when I was a kid, I didn't really read them, but like, this show is so much fun. Just the production design, the cinematography, it's so beautiful, it's so quirky, and interesting. And you have Neil Patrick Harris, who is a great actor, but he's playing a part that he has incredible passion for, and you can tell. And, you may think, oh, it's based on a kid's book, I'm not gonna watch that. But, like, it's pretty dark and, like, very kind of miserable. Like, it's not a happy show. It's not really for kids because, let's face it, like, some of that stuff is so depressing. Like, little kids probably shouldn't watch it. If you like a good adventure story, I mean, you'll enjoy the show. I mean, it's basically just adventure, despair, adventure, more despair. It's really like, it's kind of like a series of unfortunate events. But yeah, so that was my top 5 Netflix original content, mostly shows. There was one movie. I also agree with John's list. I mean, he has a great list. Some of those probably would have been in my top 5, but nonetheless, these are my top 5.
All right, thank you guys all so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have different opinions, let us know in the comments down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to drop a like. If you guys enjoyed this video or me or this type of content, or you want to see more, be sure to check out my podcast called Peaked in Middle School that I co-host with my buddy Kyle. You can also subscribe to my personal YouTube channel called The Narwhal. And with all that being said, there's new videos here every single week, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.